And joining us right now in PMP is Marni Nixon. Maybe you don't recognize her, but maybe you'd know who she was because she was the vocals for Audrey Hepburn and My Fair Lady, Deborah Carr and The King and I, and Natalie Wood in West Side Story. You've seen her all over the place. You've heard her voice, and now you can actually read about her. There's a book called I Could Have Sung All Night, My Story. Marni Nixon joins us live on PMP. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Boy, what a career you've had.
Well, I guess it's still going.
Yes, it is. It's still going, and now it's even in another direction. You're an author now, too.
That's right. The hardest thing.
Is that the hardest thing?
Well, I think it's the hardest thing that I've ever done, but it's, I did it, and now, now I can correct all my mistakes if there are any.
So how many mistakes do you think you made?
Oh, I don't think I think they were all edited out.
Now, how about in life? Did you think you made any mistakes, or?
Oh gosh, you have lots of regrets, but I think that I've tried to make them all turn out right, and I don't think you actually can think of things as mistakes.
Yeah.
It happens, and things that you'd like to redo, but you learn from them, and then you go on, and who knows whether it was a mistake or not.
What was your first singing gig, a paid gig that you'd had?
Oh gosh, I think when I was a kid, I was a violinist, and then I started singing just because my sisters and I just needed to make some money to pay for our lessons, and we did PTA meetings and Kiwanis Club meetings and things like that.
Because I know that you performed with the L.A. Philharmonic when you were 17, right?
Oh yes, I made my debut as a soloist in the Mozart Requiem with the L.A. Philharmonic when I was 17. It's true.
So how did you hook up with the movie industry? How did they find you?
Well, actually, I'm a native Californian, and that's where I was born and raised, and I was just around. And in my childhood, I used to do a lot of extra work. Excuse me. I used to do a lot of extra work and things with my violin, and just and some parts around town in repertory companies. And I think they needed kids and fillers, and so gradually you get to be known, and they send you out. And the dubbing, I think, just came from actually it was through Roger Wagner. I think no, the first dubbing I did was for Margaret O'Brien when I was working as a messenger girl at MGM, and the composer Bronislaw Kaper, he was a composer of Lily and Gaslight, a lot of fantastic pictures, Academy Award pictures, saw me on the lot and asked me if I could do any dubbing, because he had seen me in the orchestra that I was playing in, the training orchestra as a violinist, and seen me getting up from the orchestra and singing a few arias. And he saw me there on the lot as a messenger girl and said he needed his voice for this young child actress, and I think that's how it started.
So that was in The Secret Garden then?
The Secret Garden, yes.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about what happened with Debbie Kerr. I know that you did her singing part in The King and I. What were you told at that point by the studio?
Well, by the way, it's Carr. She pronounces it Carr, and Deborah didn't have to know what was in my contract, so she was very, very helpful, and she did give me some credit. But the studio told me that if I ever worked in town again, they would, if I ever said anything about doing any part of the dubbing for Deborah Carr, that they would see to it that I never worked in town again.
But of course, Debbie Carr actually told Earl Wilson of the L.A. Times that you sang her part, right?
Right, and Earl Wilson was syndicated all over the country, and it was a big article and a big admission from her, from anybody, and it was wonderful though that she did that.
Now you also worked with Julie Andrews, who's a fine singer in her own, in The Sound of Music, right?
Right, and I played Sister Sophia. Julie Andrews was a wonderful help to me. I was preparing to go off to New York to audition to do My Fair Lady, the first revival after it had closed. and I did get the part. But Julie Andrews herself, when I was on the set of Sound of Music, I asked her to help me in one scene, and she helped me a lot. And I think that she must have helped me get the part.
You think she spoke up for you as Eliza Doolittle, huh?
Yes.
It's interesting. I mean, if you think about all these things that you've been in, you think about The King and I, The Sound of Music, My Fair Lady, West Side Story, some of the biggest movies, musicals ever.
Right.
Still now to this day.
Yes, and the soundtracks, I think, are in the top. I think I'm in the top 10 of. I've got 3 or 4 in those top 10. Isn't that incredible? I mean, I was just lucky, I guess.
It is amazing, and dubbing people like Deborah Carr and of course Audrey Hepburn in My Fair Lady. What was Hepburn like? I understand she really wanted to do the singing herself.
Oh yes, she wanted to very very much so, and she was very nice, very cooperative. And she could tell when certain things weren't happening, and she kept going back and trying to re-record certain things so that she could sing better. She was taking voice lessons, and I was present at them. And all of that and more complication, of course, is in my book here. So.
I understand that. We're trying to get a little bit of interest there on the book, so
yes.
Thought we'd talk about some of these stories that are in it. And people can obviously read the whole thing, but was it awkward for you to be there with Audrey Hepburn when the whole thing was going on?
Oh no! I mean, you have to be with the actress. You have to get from them what they want. You have to become their sound. You have to try to make the timbre of your voice sound just exactly like theirs.
Mm-hmm.
And the more you worked with them, and the more cooperative they were, the better the job they could get from me.
Sure. But in her case, though, she really didn't want someone doing that. She wanted to do it herself.
Well, sure. I would too if I were doing a role. I would want to make sure that the sound of my voice is as close to mine as possible. But I don't know. It takes a little bit longer to study to really do those kind of scores like My Fair Lady and West Side Story. They're very complicated. It's not just like singing a little folk song.
Now, let me ask you a question. We mentioned just now the success of the soundtracks. Were you paid royalties? Do you still get money for these things, or were you just paid a small fee and that was it?
On The King and I, for the actual album, I got paid double scale, which was $420. That's a buyout, right? That's it.
Wow.
Can you imagine? But I did get paid for the job. I mean, it was like a 6-week job at the studio, working a week per song to get them ready to record, and so that was nice. And it was in those days I was doing a lot of concerts and classical things and operas, and I was doing commercials and jingles just to make ends meet. And so the dubbing was like, oh, whoopee, this is better than doing a chorus job.
Sure.
It didn't occur to me that they would go on for so long, and I didn't feel put upon or anything. I did try to get credit, of course, but couldn't do that.
It is interesting. I mean, I've talked to so many stars of the 50s and 60s who recorded albums, who did movies, and none of them really got what they deserved because no one could guess that video would be coming into its own and all these different developments of the internet and things.
Right.
That downloading, all these kind of things that came out later on. So, but what about the Sound of Music? Was it the same deal with Sound of Music and My Fair Lady?
Well, Sound of Music, of course, I was in as an actress.
Right.
So I'm on that soundtrack album, of course.
So you still get royalties for that?
And yes, well, you get a small amount. It's not something you negotiate for in that case.
Right.
But the union has a certain amount that you get for the amount of time you're on the soundtrack.
Mm-hmm.
So.
What about the singing in My Fair Lady?
And My Fair Lady, I did get royalties on that whole thing. I negotiated for that. I was able to do that because on West Side Story, I finally was given some royalties that were it was out of the goodness of Leonard Bernstein's heart that he gave up some of the percentage of his royalties so that I could get royalties on the recording, because the royalties were all given out, and so that set a precedence. So I did get something on that. And
so you owe Leonard Bernstein quite a bit.
Yes. Yeah, he was a wonderful person, wonderful to work with on stage, and a wonderful conductor, writer, composer.
Now, I know you worked with Liberace quite a bit. Tell us a little bit about your experiences with him.
Liberace was incredible. He was they used to call him Mr. Showbiz, which he was. I guess he got more and more flamboyant toward the end of his life, but even in those days, he really knew not only costume-wise, but he knew how to entertain an audience, and he was very talented. He was a very good pianist and a very good showman, and we would improvise on stage, and then when I would come off stage, he would then talk to me about what I just said and the faux pas that I just made or whatever, and he would say, "Oh, that's very funny. We should continue that on. You said this. Now the next show I'm going to say something else, and you just be yourself." And gradually we kind of created an act together, and he was, whatever you did, he would make come off just great. And he was wonderful at the piano, and he paid for all the orchestrations and the costumes and makeup and everything. He was very generous.
Did you stay in touch with him as he got,
Well, more or less, yes, but not so much. You just get so busy in another part of your life after you leave it. It was a very difficult party. He wanted me to stay with him for quite a bit longer, but I had to leave as his sidekick because I had other concerts, and I was doing kind of, heady things with Stravinsky and my own concerts and recordings and stuff. And I had a family, and I just couldn't travel with him that much. So he kept offering me more and more money, but I had to keep saying no. It's all in the book there, more.
Well, you talk about all the things you've done from Broadway to writing this book here. One of the things that folks might have seen you on is Law and Order.
Oh, that's right. Yes, I was in an episode called Redemption, I think it was called, and it comes around and reruns now and then. That was fun.
I was going to ask you if you enjoyed that. It's kind of a little different than you usually do.
Yes, it's nice. And here, living in New York, it's one of the shows that films here in New York, so it makes it easy. I could do that. I was appearing in Follies, in the revival of Follies on stage, and I could do Law and Order during the day.
Right. Yeah. One of the things that I heard, now I wasn't sure, I didn't finish the entire book, but maybe you can answer a question for me. Marilyn Monroe sang a song called "Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend."
Right.
It's been told to me that you actually sang part of that song? Or?
Yes, I did. The very end, girls don't lose their shape. There was a little section that was very high, and I did that for her. That was kind of fun.
So did you actually go into the same studio and record it with her?
No, I never met her.
Really?
You just do it by earphone.
Wow. So they just played the tape of her and you sang along with it.
Right, and then they just kind of coach you through it, and you hear it and give examples, and then turns out all right, I guess.
Yeah, that became her signature song, and I guess a lot of people probably don't realize that you had a part in that.
Yes, very small part.
But still a part.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the book is called "I Could Have Sung All Night." It's an autobiography from Marni Nixon with Stephen Cole, and it's available from Billboard Books. It's available all over the internet and in your neighborhood bookstore. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you very much. Yourself.
Take care, Marni.
Bye.
Bye.